Well, good morning, everybody. I got to make an honest confession. I just did something kind of creepy. Yes, what did you just do? Well, while you were praying, I kept my eyes open, and I was looking at you. Sometimes I can't help but do that. I love you guys so much, I just like to look at you. And I love the time that we get to spend together on Sunday mornings. If you're visiting with us, we are excited to have you here. Our hope is that you have such a wonderful experience you can't help but come back again and again and again. Last week I started a new sermon series that revolves around the life of a man named Joseph, and I have cleverly and creatively entitled the series Joseph. His story is found in the first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis. My goal in this series is very, very simple. I want to help you get to know Joseph. And by the time the series is over, I want you to know him really, really well. Now, there's a reason. I have a reason for that. I'm hoping and trusting that Joseph will help you as much as he has helped me in the 40-plus years that I've known him. Joseph has been a faithful companion to me, and we have walked together through my darkest, most confusing, loneliest periods of life. Joseph has helped me navigate those times. There have actually been protracted periods of my life that only made sense when I used Joseph's life as an overlay and kind of put it over mine, and I go, it's all good. I get it. I understand where I'm at. And I understand where I'm going. Through Joseph's example, I've learned how to rebound from rejection and disappointment. Joseph is the person who taught me how to forgive. Through Joseph, I learned some things about God that have enabled me to trust God when I didn't understand Him at all. It was Joseph that taught me that waiting on God is normal. It's normal. And he taught me what I should do while I'm waiting on God. From Joseph, I learned that God's plan for me is far greater than anything I could ever imagine. And it was Joseph's story that gave me hope, because I learned something from his life. Dreams do come true. If you'll hang in there with me from week to week, you're going to get to know Joseph, and I promise you in the end, you'll be glad you did. For those of you who weren't here last week, here's what we've learned about Joseph at this point. Joseph was raised in a very dysfunctional home. His father, Jacob, had 4 wives, and he had 12 other children, at least 12 other children that we know of, other than Joseph. The dysfunction was fueled primarily by Jacob's favoritism. Jacob had a wife that he loved, Rachel, and he had 3 other wives that he didn't seem to really care much for. And he didn't try to hide it. Jacob loved Joseph more than he did his 10 older sons, and once again, he didn't try to hide that. Jacob even made a special coat, and he gave it to Joseph, manifesting the fact that you're my favorite. And as you can imagine, this blatant favoritism produced jealousy. And in time, jealousy festered and turned to hatred. And just how far would hatred go between brothers? Well, the answer may shock you. And this morning, we want to pick up on Joseph's story by reading from Genesis 37, verse 5 through 11. So you ready? The events we're going to read about happened when Joseph was 17 years old. One night, Joseph had a dream. And when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. That seems impossible to do, but they did. They hated him more than ever. Listen, the Bible explains how this went down. Listen to this dream, he said, speaking of Joseph. We were out in the field tying bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine. Now, what in the world could this mean? Well, the brothers were pretty sharp. They caught on quickly, and I want you to listen to what they said. His brothers responded, "So you think you will be our king, do you?" Keyword king. Do you actually think you will reign over us? Keyword reign. They figured it out. The Bible said they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Now, where did the dream come from? Did he go to bed with an extremely busy mind? Was it the 18 tacos they had just before he lay down? And where did the dream come from? Okay, we're going to, let's do it. Warning, spoiler alert. You got it? You're with me? God gave Joseph the dream as a means of communicating with him and revealing to him what his future held. One of these days, Joseph, you're going to rule. You're going to be a great leader. Now, why in the world would Joseph go tell these brothers? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to assume it was completely out of excitement. I mean, you're 17 years old. God reveals to you that He's got an incredible plan. You're going to be, I'm going to assume, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, it was just excitement. He's got to tell somebody. And their reaction, of course, was terrible. They hated him all the more. Look what happened. Soon Joseph had another dream. And if I understand this in the Bible correctly, when God communicated with somebody through a dream, and they got a second dream, that was to confirm that this was indeed God, and confirm that the content of the first dream was going to come to pass. And so soon Joseph had another dream, and again he told his brothers about it. Now, why would you do that? Huh? Now, at this point, I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. I think that he might have been a little bit arrogant here. Like, hey guys, let me tell you something. Out of this household, God has singled somebody out for greatness. And it ain't you. I kind of feel like he was digging at them. And I'm sure that they picked on him. The Bible said, we saw this last week, they couldn't say a kind word to him. And I believe he's kind of letting them know, one of these days the table's going to turn, boys. So you best be careful. I do know this, Joey, it wasn't wise. It wasn't wise for him to tell them the second dream. But he goes on and he told his brother, listen, I've had another dream. He said, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed low before me. This time he told the dream to his father as well as his brothers, but his father scolded him. Do you see that? What kind of dream is that? He asked. Well, your mother, not speaking of Rachel, she's already deceased. His biological mother has passed away. Got to be referring to one of the other three wives who had assumed, I guess, parental responsibility, probably Leah. He said, well, your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow low to the ground before you. But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. Even though he scolded Joseph, when he got off to himself, he had to do some serious thinking. What in the world is going on with my boy? Where could this possibly be leading? Now, soon after the dreams, Jacob sent his 10 older sons north to a place called Shechem, where they were to pasture the flocks and the herds. Apparently, they had been gone a lot longer than Jacob anticipated, so he called Joseph to his side and said, I have an errand I want you to run. Go to Shechem, find your brothers, see how they're doing, come back and bring me word. Joseph was highly responsible, as we saw last week, so he said, of course, Dad, I'll do that. Left immediately, goes to Shechem. He cannot find his brothers. There was a man there that observed Joseph just kind of wandering around, and he sought him out, and he said, young man, what are you looking for? And he said, I'm looking for my brothers. They're supposed to be here with my dad's flocks and herds, but I can't find them. This is what the guy said. He said, I ran into them. And I just happened to overhear them. And that phrase, just happened, just hang on to that for a second. I just happened to overhear them say, they're going to Dothan. Was this a coincidence? I don't think so. I overheard them say they're going to Dothan. So Joseph went to the region of Dothan, and there he saw his 10 brothers and all of his father's flocks and herds, and about the time he saw them, they saw him. Verse number 18, look what happened. It said, when Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance, and who could miss him? He had on that coat, man, that flamboyant, multicolored coat of many colors. He's sporting around in that thing, walking through the field, and the brothers see the coat. They immediately recognize him. And the Bible says, as they approached, they made plans to cuss him out. Have I got the wrong translation here in front of me? Is it the wrong translation? Let me go back. As he approached, they made plans to beat the fire out of him. Am I on it? Have I got it? You want to see how far hatred will go, even between brothers? As he approached, they made plans to kill him. We're going to kill him. One of the brothers said to the other 9, "Here comes the dreamer. Here he comes." Said, I think we ought to kill him. What about you guys? Yeah, let's kill him. We're going to kill him and throw his body in an empty well. And there must have been several empty wells there, dry wells. One of them said, let's kill him and throw him in the well. And then we'll just tell Dad a wild animal ate him. Something like that. And then one of them said, yeah, then we'll see what will become of his dreams. You know what they were saying? Yeah, he may think God has a plan for his life, but wait till we get through him. There'll be no plan. There'll be no throne. We'll squelch that dream. The older brother's name was Reuben. Reuben said, let me weigh in on this. Here's what I'm thinking. Let's not kill him, but let's just throw him in an empty well and leave him. He'll die of exposure. He'll die of starvation or dehydration. It'll all be natural causes, but his death won't be on our hands. We won't be guilty of murder. That's what. Who are these dudes? How do you come up with? We won't be guilty of murder. Just throw him in there. Walk away. Let him die of natural causes. Now Reuben was not being totally forthright with his brothers. His thinking was this: if they'll just leave him in the well and we walk away, I'll come back and rescue him. And I'm going to take him back to Daddy. And so let me tell you what you're thinking. Reuben wasn't so bad after all. He was rotten to the core. His whole thought process was very self-motivated. He's thinking, if I will go back to Daddy with his favorite son, let me tell you what you other boys almost did. If it hadn't been for me, he's going to be the knight in shining armor. He's trying to earn some points with Dad. So he says, why don't we just do that? So Joseph comes walking up to his 10 brothers, and I can almost hear him say, well, hey, fellas. And they flew in on him like a monkey on a cupcake. The Bible said the first thing they did was strip that coat off of him. And then they threw him down in this empty well. And I don't know, but I got the feeling that they might have explained to him, John, exactly what was going down. I believe they might have explained that your dreams will never be a reality, because this is the last thing you're ever going to see, is the inside of this empty hole here. That's what you're going to see. And there's a psalm. There's a psalm that says that from this empty well, Joseph begged for his life. And as he begged for his life, these 9 boys, Reuben had excused him for some reason, I don't know, but the 9 boys sat down and ate their lunch as Joseph begged. They're rummaging through their lunch boxes. They're unwrapping the sandwich. Can you hear one say, you got any mustard? I'm going to have mustard with them. And the whole time, their brother's begging. And the Bible said that just out of nowhere, they see a caravan of camels coming. And it's a group of Midianite traders. And one of the commodities they traded in was slaves. Judah had an idea. Cha-ching. He turned to the others and he said, I got a better idea than Reuben's idea, who had a better idea than our idea. Remember now, boys, he is our brother. He's our flesh and blood. We just want to be careful here. I don't think we want his blood on our hands. I don't think we want to be responsible for his death. So here's what I'm suggesting. Let's get him out of the well. Let's stop them. And let's negotiate a deal. And let's sell our brother into slavery. they'll take him far, far away, and it's going to accomplish the purpose we want. He's out of our lives. We're rid of him. And in the meantime, we put just a little change. I don't have change in my pocket. A little change in our pocket. What do you guys think of that? They're like, great idea. So somebody had to go stop this caravan. I believe they're hoisting Joseph up out of the well. Joseph's got to be thinking to himself, that was a narrow escape. I thought I was going to die. And then he looks and he sees probably Judah over there bargaining with these slave traders, and they hand him a little leather pouch and jingles, and the next thing you know, he's like, what's going on, guys? Hey, sorry, man, you're their property now. They shackle Joseph to the other potential slaves, and they begin to lead him away. They sold him for 20 pieces of silver. 20 pieces of silver they sold the brother. Well, Reuben shows back up. Too late. He goes looking for Joseph. He can't find him. He inquires. They hand him 2 pieces of silver and said, you're not going to believe the good fortune we had. This group of Midianite slave traders came by and we sold him, and here's your cut. 2 pieces of silver. Well, Reuben, he cast at this point, there's only one move they can make. We've got to cover up what we've done. So they killed a goat. They took Joseph's coat of many colors and they dipped it in the blood. And then they wrote a note. And they didn't take the coat, they sent the coat with the note to their dad. Now, how did they do that? I don't know. Did FedEx come along at just the right time? They said, hey, take this to our daddy. I don't know how they did, but they sent this to him. This is what the note said. Do you recognize this? Could it have belonged to your son? Not our brother. Your son. Jacob immediately looked at it, assessed the situation, and said, a wild animal has killed my son. He went into a time of grief and mourning and depression that may have very well lasted for decades at the thought of losing his beloved Joseph. Well, whatever happened to Joseph? Look at verse number 36. You ready? It said, meanwhile, the Midianite traders arrived in Egypt. You see that? Egypt. Where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Potiphar was captain of the palace guard. Time out. Let's stop here. Are you still with me? You better hang with me. I got something for you. Let's pause here and see if we can put ourselves in Joseph's place. I think we can easily identify with what Joseph must have been feeling. He had to be shocked. Now, he knew his brothers didn't care for him. He knew that. But he obviously never dreamed they would go as far as murder. I think he was also shocked by how callous they were as he begged for his life. They had a picnic. Along with the shock, Joseph must have been frightened. It appeared he was going to die a very slow, agonizing, lonely death. Even after being sold to slave traders, Joseph must have been terrified at the thought of the unknown, not knowing what in the world was going to happen to him. Joseph had to be experiencing great emotional pain, the pain of rejection. These were his brothers, and they sold him. They sold him for 20 pieces of silver, 2 pieces of silver apiece. That's what he was worth to them. Of course, Joseph was also grieving the loss of his dad and his little brother Benjamin. For all he knew, he was never going to see them again. I got a feeling Joseph may have been very, very disappointed in how God had come through for him that day. I mean, after all, it was God who revealed to Joseph that your future includes a throne. I'm sure that Joseph was assuming that at any point God's going to step in and deliver me because I'm destined for a throne, I'm destined to be a king, not a slave. Surely, he must have reasoned, God's going to step in and do something about this. But alas, to his dismay, deliverance never came. He ended up a slave in Egypt. What a major disappointment that must have been for him. I think it's pretty easy to identify with Joseph's feelings, but what was he thinking? Fortunately, we don't have to wonder what he was thinking. The Bible tells us exactly what he was thinking. In Genesis 40, verse 14 through 15, Joseph said, and I paraphrase, this was like 11 years, 12 years, 11 years later. He's explaining to a man what happened to him that day and the circumstances of his life that had unfolded. And I paraphrase, this is what he said. This wasn't supposed to happen to me. This couldn't possibly be God's plan. Something went wrong. And my life has spun out of control. This wasn't supposed to happen to me. This couldn't possibly be God's plan for me. Something has gone wrong. And my life has spun out of control. I want us to stop right there. Because some of you are really relating to Joseph right now. You feel that your life is out of control. You're facing things that you never thought you would face, and furthermore, you're facing things you never thought God would allow you to face. There was a time in your life where everything made sense, but that time has come and gone. You feel disoriented. It's kind of like the signal dropped, disabling the GPS, and you don't know the direction you're going, and furthermore, you have no idea the direction you should be going. You feel absolutely lost and completely helpless. Amidst all of your uncertainty, there is one thing you are certain of. You're no longer in control of your life. Well, if you're not in control, I want you to listen to me. If you're not in control, who is? The spouse who left you? Have they taken control of your life? The company that laid you off? Are they in control? The supervisor who gave the promotion to somebody else? Are they in control? The people who are slandering you? Who's in control? If you're identifying with any of this, there's a great lesson to be learned from Joseph's story. When life feels out of control, God is still in control. Now tell me, look at me. You got that, right? Somebody here today desperately needs that, and I know this. Somebody's going to walk out here today, and within 30 days, you're going to desperately need to remember that. You with me? When life feels out of control, God is still in control. And I know what some of you are thinking, Ronnie. Don't tell me that you believe God was in control of Joseph's life when all of this nightmare began to unfold. Yes, I'm telling you that. God was in control. And if you give me just a minute, I'm going to prove it to you, okay? To do that, we got to jump ahead in Joseph's story again. Spoiler alert. In spite of everything we saw this morning that happened to him, Joseph's dreams came true. In spite of everything that happened, Joseph's dreams came true. He took a throne one day. And he ruled. As a matter of fact, when God does something, He does it right. He became the second most powerful man in the world. Are you kidding me? I'm not kidding you. I'm kidding you. He became a powerful ruler. Do you know where? I'm going to give you one guess, and I'm going to give you a clue to make sure you get the guess. Where did the slave traders take Joseph? Egypt. Egypt. With that in mind, I want you to take note of God's control in Joseph's ordeal. You got to know this. This wasn't a default. This wasn't a consolation prize. This was God's plan all along. God chose this man to rule, and He chose that he would rule in the land of Egypt. If Joseph was destined to rule in Egypt, he had to relocate. He had to move. He had to move to Egypt. Do you think for a minute that Joseph would have ever left his dad voluntarily? Do you think he would have done that? I don't think he would have. And I promise you this, he would have never left his little brother Benjamin in close proximity to those 10 cutthroat brothers of his. He never would have left him, not voluntarily. So guess what God did? God relocated him. God moved him. That's exactly what happened. Now, let me be clear. God didn't lead Joseph's 10 older brothers to do what they did. He didn't give them that plan and say, this is what you should do. However, he used their spiteful actions to move Joseph exactly where he wanted him to be. If Joseph's dreams were going to come true, there were two things that couldn't happen. Number one, those boys couldn't kill him. They wanted to. They planned to, but they didn't. Why not? God was in control, and he wouldn't let him take it that far. There was a second thing that couldn't happen. Joseph couldn't be rescued. Reuben wanted to, Reuben planned to, but he didn't. Why not? Because God was in control, and he wouldn't let him rescue him. Think about this. How do you explain the timing of the slave traders' caravan? Was that a coincidence that they showed up when they did? No, God was in control, and he made sure that they showed up at just the right moment. How do you explain the fact that Reuben stepped out of the picture just long enough for this transaction to take place? Just bad timing on Reuben's part? Oh, no. God was in control and made sure Reuben was not there to interfere. How do you explain the fact that of all places, this caravan was headed down to Egypt? Why not New Zealand? Why not England? Why not Kentucky? You tell me, was that a fluke? No. God made it happen because he was in control. Have I proven my point? If not, I'll just let Joseph speak for himself. 22 years after he was sold into slavery, he's reunited with those 10 guys, 10 brothers. And he explains to them what happened to him from his perspective. And it's recorded in the book of Genesis, chapter 45, verse 5 through the first portion of verse 8. Listen to what he said to his 10 older brothers. He said, but don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. Okay, I got to ask you something. 22 years later, after somebody sold you into slavery, this is the first opportunity you got to talk to him. That's what you're going to say to him? Huh? Am I the only human being in the room? Because that ain't what I would have said. You got it? Don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves. Sell me this place, guys. Calm down. Look at this. This is amazing. It was who sent me here. You hear what he's saying? You were never in control of my destiny, boys. Not for a minute. Not for a minute. Don't you think for a moment that God turned the controls of my life over to you 10 thugs? That's probably more like what I'd said. God's been in control the whole time. He sent me here ahead of you to preserve lives. This famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more years, and there'll be neither plowing nor harvesting. And just in case you didn't get it on the first time, listen to me, guys. Has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and preserve many survivors. So it was who sent me here, not you. 3 times he said it. 3 times he said it. God has been in control of my life all along. Not you, nor anyone else, nor any other circumstances. God has been in control of my life. You know the great thing about hindsight? It's 2020. And in hindsight, Joseph learned a valuable lesson that he's passing on to you today. When life feels out of control, God is still in control. Here's what it means to you. No matter what you're facing, no matter what has happened, no matter what anyone has done to you, no matter what you've lost, No matter what today or tomorrow may hold, God never relinquishes the control of your life. No tragedy is ever going to hit you so hard that it knocks you off course. God's going to hold you steady and make sure that you are right on target. No one, no matter what they say or do, can prevent God from fulfilling His plan for your life. I want to make sure you heard that. No one, no matter what they say or do, can prevent God from fulfilling His plan for your life. You need to grab hold of that. As a matter of fact, God will use their hurtful actions to fulfill His good plan for you. And as I was preaching in the first service, I thought of a couple of things. I didn't come prepared to say. When I came to Golden Corner Church over 22 years ago, I did not want to come here. I was pastoring a church. I had 10 years of my life invested there. And I loved that church. And there was a lot left undone that I wanted to see through. I wanted to stay there long enough to see it through. Then why did I leave there and come here? And by the way, let me preface it by saying this. I got to be the happiest pastor in the world. I'm serious. I got to be the happiest pastor on the face of God's earth. This is the best church. And I didn't want to come. Then why did I come? Because I ran into some of the meanest, honoriest, most low-down people I'd ever met. And they were sitting on the pews of a church. And they made it so uncomfortable for my wife and I that we didn't have a choice. We got to go. We got to get out of here. And you know what? God relocated me and brought me to the place where He knew that I would probably spend out the rest of my ministry. Might be bad news from you, and I'm planning on retiring right here. You understand that? What if I'd have stayed there and had not come here? Thank God for those mean, low-down, ornery, lying people. I'm serious, man. I've got it written in my journals. Thank you, God, for the people who have been so good to me, but I really thank you for the people who have been so bad to me over the course of my life. I'm telling you, God uses jerks like that to move you around, to relocate you where He wants you to be. And there was, I can't help but think this little guy, he was a pastor here in Oconee County. And he had said some really negative things about me, so Anderson, I went to meet him. And I confronted him. Well, what are you doing here, dude? I mean, what do you say? This is what he said. You're going to think I'm lying. This is what he said. When I get through, it is my intent that you will never preach again in Oconee County. That's what he told me. To my face, Billy. To my face. He said, there come a day when people in Oconee County won't even remember who you were. And he said, I'll still be here. And I'll still be preaching. I'm still here. I'm still preaching. He ain't. You got it? Nobody can stop what God has got planned for your life. Nobody. God, listen, when your life feels out of control, God is still in control. That's a fact. And in light of that, what should we do? Here's what I'm suggesting. It's this simple. Trust God. Trust God. When life feels out of control, we should trust God. Why? He's in control and He knows what He's doing. You think in my early days here, I didn't look up to God and go, what are we doing? What are you doing here? This church has a pastor. And they don't have money. And you brought me here. And you're telling them that they're supposed to pay me with make-believe money. What are we going? Oh, God, I don't understand any of this. I didn't think He knew what He was doing. To trust Him, we've got to believe that He knows what He's doing even when we don't. Joseph didn't know that his throne was in Egypt, did he? No. He didn't know how or when he would rule. Joseph didn't know which path would lead to his destiny. All he knew is one day I'm going to be a leader. That's all God had let him in on. God kept most of the details hidden from Joseph. Why do you think He did that? I mean, knowing the situation, the path it was. Why didn't He just explain everything to Joseph up front? You know, when Joseph struck out to go to Shechem, what did God say? Well, son, you know, we got a long walk ahead of us, so I'm going to explain something to you. When you get up there, your brothers, they're going to think about killing you. You're going to spend a little time in a well. They're going to get you out of the well. Then you're going to be sold to slave traders, and they're going to take you down to Egypt. You're losing everything you've got today. Everything. But you can trust me because I want you in Egypt. Because in about 13 years, that's where you're going to get your throne. Why didn't God explain all of that to him up front? Wouldn't it have helped? Why wouldn't he do that? I'll tell you why. He wanted Joseph to trust him. Trust me. I'm going to give you a little bit, but I'm going to withhold most of the details because I want you to trust me. Well, did he? In the beginning, not so much. Only in hindsight did Joseph fully trust God, because only in hindsight was Joseph fully convinced that God indeed knew what he was doing. Only in hindsight did God make sense to Joseph. We may know a little about God's plan for our life, but God knows everything. Every last detail. He sees the big picture. He sees the end from the beginning. He sees the master plan. He knows the where, the when, the how, and the why. God will reveal some of the details of His plan for our life while withholding most of them. Why do you think that is? He wants us to trust Him. Just trust me. And to trust Him, we've got to believe that He knows what He's doing. We've got to believe that what doesn't make sense to us makes perfect sense to God. When life feels out of control, God is still in control. Trust Him. I'll be 62 in November. 62. I know what you're thinking. Well, he doesn't look it. No. I know what you're thinking. Is that it? That's all he is? I'll be 62. Let me tell you what I was thinking about a while ago. I got really emotional thinking about it. When I first was introduced to Joseph, I was a young man. My whole life was in front of me. 40 years left. 4 decades have passed since I met this guy. You know what it means, Danny? I see a lot of things not by faith out there. I can turn around and see a lot of things in hindsight. Crystal clear. 2020. One of the things I've learned is that God knows what He's doing. He can be trusted. There have been lots of long stretches of the journey that have been totally confusing to me. And when I've hit those stretches, I have a few tendencies. One, I try to figure out what God's doing and make some sense out of it. Don't waste your time. Trust Him. Just trust Him. There have been times that I called Him into question. I'd pray and I would demand an explanation. God, you owe me an explanation. I am completely confused. What are you doing here? Don't waste your time. Trust Him. So many gaps in the journey where I was angry with Him. That He didn't prevent something or He didn't do something. And I don't get it, how this correlates with you being a good and a faithful and a loving God. Don't waste your time pouting at Him. Trust Him. When it feels life is out of control, God is still in control. Just trust Him. Let's pray together. I pray, God, for whoever it is that's sitting here this morning who is so readily, completely identified with Joseph. I pray that right now they're finding peace And that soon they'll find rest in the knowledge that their lives are in the hands of a good God. That their future is in the hands of a faithful, loving, competent God. I pray that they will find the capacity to just trust you. To trust you and to be patient with you. And give you time to get them where you're taking them. And use them the way you intend to use them. And bless them the way you intend to bless. I pray that their faith will enable them to patiently wait on you to unfold this marvelous plan that you have for them. In the name of Jesus, we pray this together. Amen. You're dismissed. Thank you.